to One Life Church. My name is Sarah. We're so thankful that you're joining us here today. We've been in a series called Restore, Rebuilding the Broken Soul. We're going to be wrapping up that series today. We're going to hear another story from the life of Jesus, a pretty important one, and one that really kind of changes a lot of different things. And so we're so excited to be joining with you today. This series has been incredible. We've heard some great stories, had some incredible conversations. We wanted to do three things with the series. One, grow a deeper and closer relationship with God. We wanted to give you some resources to just restore and rebuild yourself after a pretty tough time from this past year, and then also build closer and deeper connections with one another. We hope you've had an opportunity to do that. We'd still love to have conversations with you. If it's your first time visiting us today, or maybe you're just looking for a place to connect and belong, go to onelifechurch.info, fill out a simple digital connection card there, and let's have a conversation. We're going to start our day right now with a time of worship through singing. Let's go.
Well, good morning, everybody at One Life. If you're watching from online or maybe from one of our campuses, or if you're watching here at our East Campus, I want everybody to go ahead and stand to your feet this morning, and we're going to go into a time of worship. Bursting inside us, we cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us, like blazing wildfires, singing your name. God of mercy, may this offering stretch across the sky. These hallelujahs be multiplied. These hallelujahs be multiplied. Come on. Bursting inside us, we cannot contain. Your love will surely come find us, like blazing wildfires, singing your name. Sing it out. Sing, God of mercy. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. Sing, you can have it all. You can have it all, Lord. You can have it all. Every part of my, that's right. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is yours. Oh, the joy I found in surrendering my crowns at the feet of the King, who surrendered everything. But oh, the peace that comes when I'm broken and undone by your unfailing grace. I will lift my voice, will lift my voice and say, you can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. Sing it out. Come on. You can have it all, Lord. You can have it all. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. This is a time where I want you to be specific in your prayers. And if you'll feel comfortable saying it out loud, when you say have it all, what do you mean? Be very specific about you can have it all. You can have my anxieties about my finances. You can have my ego, God. Father, you can have my fear. You can have my control that I try to make things happen when I try to manipulate situations. God, you can have my family. I hand that over to you. You can have this sickness. I want you to be specific as you feel comfortable. Come on. There is no greater call than giving you my all. I lay it all down. I lay it all down. There is no greater love, no higher name above. I lay it all down. I lay it all Take this life and breathe on this heart that is yours.
You will stay true, even when the lies come. Your word remains truth, even when my thoughts don't line up. I will stand tall on each promise you made. Let the rest fade away. There's a peace far beyond all understanding. May it ever set my heart at ease. Dare anxiety come, I'll remember that peace is a promise you keep. Peace is a promise you keep. You will stay true, even in the chaos. Your word remains true, even when my mind wreaks havoc. I will be still, for I've known all along my Jehovah Shalom. There's a peace far beyond all understanding. May it ever set my heart at peace. What anxiety fails to remember is peace is a promise you keep. Peace is your promise you keep. That bridge one more time. But before we do, I want to remind you that it's not only okay to cast all your cares on Jesus, but in the book of 1 Peter, he instructs us to cast all his cares. our cares on him because he cares for us. And I don't know about you, but when anxiety rises in my life, sometimes I try to do some self-care, right? Maybe I'll go for a run and try to run harder or work harder on this situation and go into fix and repair mode. But it's only when I realize that all I need to do is close the door, whether it be to my bedroom or my car, and turn on some worship music and begin quoting truth, scripture, over in my mind, that I find that the calming peace of God takes over and changes the situation. And guys, I know how it is. Emotions are strong, and they really have a way of overwhelming and taking us over, but we have to remember that we cannot trust our emotions. Our emotions are not there to guide us into our future. No, Jesus is there to guide us into our future. His truth is what we trust. His truth is what we stand on when everything else seems out of control. So I want to encourage you this morning to hang on to God's peace. Take this moment to just relax in the presence of God and let him fill you with his peace, because that's what he wants to do today. All right, let's sing it again. Yes. You are peace to a restless soul. Yeah. Peace when my thoughts sway toward. You are peace to the anxious heart. That's who you are. That's who you are. That's who you are. You are peace when my fear takes hold. You are peace when I feel enclosed. You are peace when I lose control. That's who you are. That's who you are. I found peace far beyond all understanding. Let it flow when my mind's under siege. All anxiety bows in the presence of Jesus, the keeper of peace. And peace is a promise he keeps. Yeah. Praise God. Praise God. You may be seated.
I love that we get to be a part of worship together like that we have a moment every week where we get to raise our voices and unite together to just glorify God. So thank you for being a part of it, and thank you for letting me join with you in that moment. You know, I just want to share a little bit of some things that have been happening around here at One Life Church, and not in the context of like events, just telling you about some of the conversations we're having, you know, because I am actually always blown away that one of our values is that we evaluate for continual improvement. That's really cool. I don't think a whole lot of places would let you do that. I mean, our lead pastor lets us tell him things that we'd like to change or tweak, even about his messages, and he does those things and listens to us. I love that. That value happens at every level here at One Life Church. And so one of the things we've been asking, okay, culture looks a little bit different right now. We know that people are kind of asking, what's it look like to be a part of community, be a part of church? You know, maybe it looks really, really different. Maybe I'm not comfortable coming into a building, or maybe I'm not sure if I even want to live in the same town I used to live in, or do some of the things inside the church groups or teams that I did before. And so all that looks a little bit different. And I just want to tell you that as we've been processing this, here's what I know for sure about everyone here at One Life Church. There's no one here that is looking for anyone to just do something because we need it done. Genuinely, when we ask people to join a group or a team to be on the knowledge side or the practice side of our spiritual formation path, it really is driving us to grow and deepen our faith with God more by uniting and growing in community with each other. That happens here, and you can be a part of that. Maybe you're kind of looking for a spot to jump back into or a place to do that. You can go to onelifechurch.org/connect right now. You can look at some of the things, some of the options and opportunities there, or you can just fill out that digital connection card and let's just have a conversation and just get to know each other, because that's what church community is all about. Maybe you give here financially, and you and we get to be a part of this mission together and make it happen in an amazing way where we get to glorify God. That's incredible. Thank you so much for being a part of that. Maybe you want to join in that side of generosity and start kind of working in that muscle that Jimmy talked about last week and grow in that side of generosity, because it does allow us to even love God more. When we make ourselves less, we can make Him greater. And I know that sounds weird, maybe you've never tried it, but just think about it. When we get rid of things that kind of hold tight to us, that we think are ours, and we give them away, it allows us to just kind of die to ourselves in a lot of ways and allow God to continue to be glorified. So we've made that very easy for you. You can go to onelifechurch.org/give or hit give on the One Life app. Can I pray for us? Father, thank you so much for just the joys that we continually to see here at our church, in our communities, in our world, and in even some of the things that we know aren't joys, God. We ask just for your hope and for your joy and for your guidance and for your power to take control of things like happening even in Myanmar. Our friends in Myanmar are struggling, and there's so many things that are happening that seem so far out of our control, God. We lift those up to you, ask for your power to take control and continue to have your name glorified and just bring peace to those who love you and support you in places like Myanmar, God. God, I pray whatever is given financially today here is given for your glory. In your name we pray, amen. All right, guys, so we are going to close out our series, Restore, Rebuilding the Broken Soul, with our lead pastor, Brett Nicholson.
Well, welcome everyone across all three of our sites. I've got three things I have to accomplish, and the first one is I want to encourage you to go what we call Kickstart. That's being offered at all three of our campuses today, and the reason is because the coaching I give everyone when they come to church, they're new especially, is always trying to make the big room smaller. You always want to make the big room smaller. You're in a crowd, and we've created a way, and Kickstart is the best way, to go into a place where you're not just a part of the crowd, you're actually connected to other people. Now, the second thing I need to accomplish is we are closing out this series that we've been doing for several weeks now called Restore. And the whole premise was most people had a pretty rough 2020. Our culture, our world did. Not only was there the pandemic, but also there's racial tensions, and we're really not out of those things. And then now you add into that, it seems like mass shootings are on the rise. There's a lot of tension in our culture, and it works on our souls and really kind of does a bludgeoning to what we're going, and we become frayed around the edges on the inside. So we've been talking about how can you see that kind of stuff repaired on the inside, and how can you do that intentionally. So I want to lock some things down today. Now, the third thing I have to do is that we are going to go to a passage in the Bible that is above my pay grade, if I'm being honest. I mean, it is so profound and so rich and so amazing that I almost don't feel up to the task, but I hope you'll get a lot out of it. And it's found in Luke chapter 9, because what we've been doing is we've been going through the life of Jesus to search out how we can have restored souls. Luke chapter 9 says this, beginning at verse 28. It says, some 8 days after these sayings, he, talking about Jesus, took along Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face became different, and his clothing became white and gleaming. And behold, two men were talking with him, and they were Moses and Elijah, who appearing in glory were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions had been overcome with sleep. When they were fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. And as these were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah, not realizing what he was saying. While he was saying this, a cloud formed and began to overshadow them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. Then a voice came out of the cloud saying, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." And when the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. And they kept silent and reported to no one in those days any of the things that they had seen. Now, I hope you can see that I mean that it's above my pay grade in the sense that this is one of the most profound stories in all of life. It really is. And it was one of those things that if we're getting an accurate report, it answers millions of questions about life. It does all kinds of things, and there's lots of different angles that you could look at it through. But what I want to do today is, because we are trying to lock down some things on the restore issue in our lives, I want to view this passage through the prism of being restored. How can it help us to know how we can have restored souls? And so from this passage, I'm going to give you just a few things. The first one's this, is if you want to be restored, plan prayerful rest. Plan prayerful rest. Now, we need to see the story in the flow, the context of Jesus' flow of his life. And we've talked about this. If you haven't been with us, forgive me. Well, we've talked about this several times, that Jesus is going around, he's healing, he's preaching, he's teaching, he's doing what Jesus does. But then he does this thing where he pulls aside the 12, and he says, okay, now what's going to happen is you 12 guys, I'm going to send you out, and you're going to preach, and you're going to heal, and you're going to cast out demons. In other words, you're going to do the things that I've been doing. And so presumably they go away for several weeks, and then they come back. And what we saw, even though we're studying through the book of Luke, we saw Mark, the Gospel of Mark, reports they're coming back this way. Listen carefully. It says the apostles gathered together with Jesus, and they reported to him all they had done and taught. And he said to them, now get this, especially when it comes to restoration, come away by yourselves to a secluded place and rest a while. Jesus said that. For there were many people coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. So it's a crowded place, and there's a lot of chaos going on. They went away in a boat to a secluded place by themselves. That was the goal. It was a little miniature vacation. But then the next verse says this, the people saw them going, and many recognized them and ran there together on foot from all the cities and got there ahead of them. So Jesus says, you need to go to a secluded place, and they go to the secluded place, and it's not secluded anymore, which is telling all by itself that even Jesus himself could be interrupted by life. So they were promised this rest, this restoration time. And I want you to hear Jesus' words, that there was a season of life where they went through a number of things they were excited about, that they poured themselves out, but he said, okay, now you need to regather. Now you just need to take some secluded time and just all of us to be restored. It gets interrupted, but then Jesus does not go back on his word. And what happens after that is that Luke reports they go 30 miles to the north to a place called Caesarea Philippi. And Caesarea Philippi was a place that was a non-Jewish area, and it probably wouldn't have had the kind of crowds that they were used to interrupting them. And you can tell. And this passage that we just read, it begins by saying, 8 days after these sayings. Now what he does, he takes them 30 miles away, he gets them to a secluded place, and he asks them a question. We looked at this last week. He says, who are the crowds saying that I am? Who are the people saying that I am? What's my identity? And then he asks, who do you say I am? What's my identity? And then you can tell from this passage is that identity is kind of the theme of his entire restful period with them. But how does he do that? It says they after 8 days after the identity question, it just says after 8 days they went up on a mountain. We don't know what happened during the 8 days. They might have done a whole lot of some things. They might have done a whole lot of nothings. We don't know. We're not told. I think it was the break that he promised them, this secluded time. Because it says, then of the 12, he picked these three, Peter, James, and John, and he takes them up on a mountain to do what? To pray. To pray. Now let me just confess that one of the things I've always feared when I preach, especially knowing that we're in the Bible Belt and people are used to many of these things. Many of us have church background of some kind. I fear cliches. I fear getting up here and saying the obvious in some ways, and sound like I'm wagging my finger. So when I say plan prayerful rest, you probably hear, okay, if you really want to be restored, here's what you need to do. You just need to pray. You need to pray, 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 pray. As a matter of fact, I don't know how many of you have been around, but years ago, our staff and some other volunteers did this whole thing where they made fun of me. They made this little puppet thing. We'll have to bring it out one of these days. They made a puppet me, basically. And in imitation of me, they just had me say, pray, 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 pray. You just really need to pray. Just pray more. Pray, 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 pray. And that was their way of, so I guess my fear of cliche hasn't worked very well, because that was a theme that people picked up on, and you want to make fun of me, just have me repeat prayer all the time. Well, here I'm doing it again. But I want you to look at something. Jesus took them away to a secluded place, and he wanted to restore their souls. And what did he do? He took them on a mountain to do what? To pray. The greatest life ever lived by anybody's estimation. The most influential person who ever walked the planet. As he's training his immediate followers, what does he have them do? He takes them up to a mountain to pray. But I want you to notice that I said, plan prayerful rest. I'm not talking about you just need to pray more and you'll be better. My encouragement to you is that you would actually plan for special times of prayer that maybe you don't have in your life. If you want your soul and your heart and your life restored, one of the most important things that you can do is plan prayerful rest, personal prayer retreats, that kind of thing. So the Huffington Post is not exactly Christianity Today as far as their outlook on things and their philosophy. But it was interesting. They had an article called, quote, "Why People Who Pray Are Healthier Than Those Who Don't." Here's how the article opened. They said, quote, if you want to achieve maximum health, here are a few things that you should do. Exercise regularly, eat nutritious and minimally processed foods, drop those extra pounds, sorry to bring that up, everybody, and pray. That's right. Regular prayer and meditation has been shown in numerous scientific studies to be an important factor in living longer and staying healthy. Now, I love when this happens, because this happens all of the time, that modern scientific research will show that, yes, it's confirmed that the Bible, what's been telling you for thousands of years, is correct, because God knows how you're wired. Literally, you can be more physically healthy if you have the practice of prayer regularly in your life. And it said, numerous scientific studies. You can do this for yourself. Put in Google, health benefits of prayer. Here's one sample of this. This is from the American Journal of Epidemiology, Johns Hopkins University. This is a journal article. It says this. They did a whole study on young people in prayer. Quote, compared with never praying or meditating, daily prayer practice was associated through their research with greater positive effect, emotional processing, and emotional expression, greater volunteering, a greater sense of mission, and more forgiveness, lower likelihoods of drug use. Now, this is kind of interesting. It also is possibly associated with greater life satisfaction and self-esteem, greater likelihood of being registered to vote. And then a kind of interesting thing they threw in there. Okay, these people seem to register to vote more, and a greater and fewer depressive symptoms and lower risk of cigarette smoking. That is just an objective scientific journal going out and say, what are the health benefits of prayer? You just list them off. So Jesus goes around and he says, you need to pray, 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 pray. He takes them up on the mountain to pray. They needed to be in a secluded place. Plan prayerful rest. So my first challenge to you as we just lock down this series and we send you into the future, I want to challenge you to literally sit with your calendar and look at your day and take out a 15-minute slice. If you know, I know most people pray in the shower on their way to work, but I'm going to challenge you to take it another step, to actually plan prayerful rest. But not only that, not on a daily thing. This is something I haven't done enough in my life. I've done it some, but most people that I talk to have a vibrancy of soul. They can almost always tell you of some personal prayer retreat they did somewhere out there. They do it once a month, once a quarter, even once a year. I told you I went to a cabin. I do it about once a year. And I went to a cabin down in Cadiz, Kentucky recently. I had a friend of mine, after I announced this in a sermon and all this, he said, Brett, I want to encourage you to do that more and more. He's at our church, and he said, because I can tell it positively affects you. And honestly, it positively affects us. If you're doing good, we tend to be doing better as well. It was just taken apart. 2 days of prayer and fasting and just really good before God. So I want to challenge, and I know I'm at a season of life where I can tend to do that more. I had little kids once upon a time, and it wasn't as easy to do that. So maybe plan an hour, maybe plan a couple hours, just to go to a park somewhere and say, I am going to pray. And we're going to provide some resources on how to fill that time, because not only is it something that will restore your soul, according to science, it'll restore your body even. That's what Jesus had them do. Now, here's another resource. Now, we really want to lock down this resource thing because we don't want this series to just come and go. On our website, on our app, we have a number of resources, books, podcasts, websites that are for restoration. We have one resource called a Spiritual Pathways Assessment. And what I'm going to ask everybody to do across all 3 campuses, or if you're at home, when the service is over, take 5 minutes, open it up on your phone, and take the survey. Because what it does, it helps you to know how you best connect with God. It gives you insight in that, and you can talk to people about it. Mine came up with, it said, I need more intellectual stimulation, and I need nature. I need to be out in nature and have intellectual stimulation. It just told me about me. So I need to consciously and intentionally think in terms of reading books that really challenge my mind, and also go to the mountains. And by the way, speaking of mountains, did you notice? We've done these surveys before. There's 2 kinds of people in life. There are beach people, and there are mountain people. Jesus was a mountain person. Thank you very much. Sorry for the person who really got excited when I said beach people. And I was like, that's great, except Jesus was the other kind. No, I'm kidding. He probably hung out at beaches too. He's around water a lot. But know what kind of person you are. I need to be in the mountains. I need to go to the mountains. And if you can go to the mountains, go to a small mountain if you need that in your life. Keep track of that. And I can also tell you this. One of the things that we're doing as a staff right now is we're discussing how can we plan prayerful rest as a part of our culture around here. We're ready to change some things about how we go about things to help people really have that prayerful rest. The next thing is this. One of the things I love about reading Jesus' life is you are getting to read the greatest life that ever lived. Just getting to watch him, studying him, Luke, and you can be reminded he speaks with authority, he's healing, and he's teaching, and he's challenging, and he's saying things that are surprising, and he's doing all these magnanimous, wonderful things. But what I also love about him is he's always juxtaposed with his immediate disciples. It's like you get a comparison thing. I mean, I've told you this before. I remember seeing a comedian who said the Olympics are coming up. But what we need, we don't understand just how great these athletes are. They've been training for 4 years, some of them 8, 10, 12 hours a day. These are the elite of the elite. They're the greatest in the world. But what we need running next to them on the 100-meter race is just a normal person, like me. So you can fully appreciate just how fast these people are. And in some sense, it's kind of what you have with Jesus, juxtaposed by his followers. Because I want you to notice something. What did it say? He picked Peter, James, and John. And he took them up to the mountain to do what? To pray. Now here's how it reads. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face became different, and his clothing became white and gleaming. And behold, 2 men were talking with him, and they were Moses and Elijah, who appearing in glory were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. Now listen. Now Peter and his companions had been overcome with sleep. But when they were fully awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men standing with him. So why did they go up on the mountain? Why did they go up there? To do what? Jesus took them up to pray. And what were his followers doing? Doing what you do whenever you go to pray. I'm praying for them. You ever done that before? I'm praying, I really got alone. Isn't that refreshing? They were up on a mountain with Jesus. He took them up with the express purpose of praying, and they were overcome with sleep. I love it. You fast forward in their lives. The night before Jesus died, he's crucified. He's going to rise again from the dead. And he tells them, I'm down. I'm hurting. I want you guys here with me. Would you watch me? I'm just going to go over here and pray some. Just be here and pray along with me and everything. What were they doing when he comes back? Were they praying? No. Sleeping. I love that. There's something about that that's cool. Why? Because I can see myself in it. I can see you in it. Some of you are sleeping right now. You're not even paying attention because you're sleeping. And in some real sense, that is refreshing. It's the reminder to embrace your humanness. There's a great passage in the book of Psalms. It's found in Psalm 103 that this reminds me of. It says, just as a father has compassion on his children, so the Lord has compassion on those who fear him. For he himself knows our frame. He is mindful that we are but dust. Does that mean we don't have any value? No. It just means Jesus pegged it whenever he found his disciples more than once sleeping the night before he was betrayed. He said, your spirit is willing, but your flesh is weak. Your flesh is made of dust. But here's the beauty of it, is that God has compassion on the fact that he knows, I'm going on the mountain with Jesus to pray, but I'm going to take a nap while it's happening. So here's the second thing I want you to know. If you want to be restored, I'm going to say it this way from this passage. Remember that you're dust. I'm not saying you're not valued. It just means that there's an embrace your humanness part of this, that you are someone who gets tired, you need to eat right, you need to get some naps. If you want your soul to be restored, you need to acknowledge the fact that you are a human being that has physical needs and you get a proper amount of rest. You even sometimes when you want to do the best of all, you do fail. Now that's not permission to do a bunch of immoral things. But when you find yourself being very human, in the light of amazing stuff that goes on, give yourself a little bit of a break. Kind of ease up a little, because he did. Because what's wonderful about it is, even though they were sleeping and the things started happening, the gleaming is probably what woke them up. Man, things are getting bright out here. Somebody, I was having a good nap there. And they open up, and that's what happens. And then what happens? Peter notices what's going on. Now, he's a true extrovert is someone who thinks and says, and there's no filter in between. If you think it, you say it. That's who Peter was. He was someone who, he's looking at this, and there's Moses and Elijah, and there's Jesus, and we could build a tabernacle, and something that's tied to his Jewish practice of the Feast of Tabernacles or whatever. I don't think it was necessarily that spiritual. He was just, we can build tabernacles. I put you in one, and him in one, and him in one. But because the text goes on to say he didn't know what he was saying. He didn't realize what he was saying. It's good for us to be here. And I can almost picture Moses and Elijah going, who's that guy? What's he doing? He's us. He's us not knowing what to do. But notice they were sleeping, but the revelation still happened. While Peter is commenting on this, we could build these tabernacles. It says the cloud came down while he was still speaking. Heaven itself interrupted him, which is a cool thing too. Here he is talking to him, I got this great idea. And heaven itself just brings this cloud down. And then it says they were terrified. They were absolutely terrified. That's us again, being dust. And then comes the voice. So allow yourself to be human. Remember your dust, but embrace that. He remembers your dust. You can too. And when you're struggling under the weight of your own shredded soul, remember that you are dust, but you can still get to know him, and he's patient with you, and he's compassionate to you. But he wants you to get the third and most important thing that I want to pass along. It's this. Make your ambition greater revelation. Make your ambition greater revelation if you want to be restored. Because the whole point, you can tell, of the passage is just that. What he did, he said, right before, 8 days before they went up there, he said to his disciples, who do the people say I am? Who do you say I am? And then he reveals, and they say, you're the Christ of God. And he says, that's right. Now then he begins to dismantle what that means in their mind. And one way to dismantle is 8 days later, these three guys are going up on the mountain, they're asleep, and they wake up to what? They wake up to Jesus being revealed on levels we can't even comprehend. He is God in the flesh. This is where this kind of thing began. He wasn't just some military leader who's going to help us out with some problems. He is something far more than that. He is God in the flesh, and his glory is being revealed. So that's the first revelation. You'll see this passage talks about glory a lot. It has glory of Jesus, glory of Moses, glory of Elijah. What is glory? And we've talked about this a number of times before, but if you've never been with us, glory can be remembered in two terms: light and weight. Light and weight. Light meaning light is brightness. Glory is brightness. His clothes were gleaming. So brightness it signifies purity. It signifies energy and power. It's this whole thing. Imagine yourself like the sun has glory, and you're in a spaceship, and you just head towards the sun, and it gets brighter and brighter and more powerful all the time. That's glory. That's one side of glory. The other side is weight. Now, what do I mean by weight? It's not literal weight. It means weight of importance. the significance or importance. So my wife and I were dropping our daughter off at the Evansville airport one time and several years ago and sending her to fly to Florida to visit a relative. And I happened to be there kind of unintentionally when Air Force One landed at the Evansville airport. I didn't know it was going to happen, so we'll stick around for this, you know. We watched and watched and watched. And I don't know if you've ever seen Air Force One, but coming into the Evansville airport especially, it's a 747 for one thing. This massive airplane comes in. It was almost overwhelming. You saw it coming over the building. But then it says United States of America on the side. It's Air Force One. It's the most famous, weighty airplane in the world. And then there was all this military around there, and the Secret Service, and everything. That's what it's getting to. Weight, glory is weight. It's importance. In other words, when his clothes were gleaming, it wasn't just, wow, that's bright. It's, wow, he is a lot more than I ever anticipated he was. He's much, much more than I ever thought he was. And it says Moses and Elijah had glory. So that's the second thing that happens. Why Moses and Elijah? It says they have glory, they have brightness, they have weight. Well, there's scholars that debate that, and it doesn't tell us why it was those two. I fall in the camp that says, I think Moses, for one thing, if you're a Jewish person, Moses was the number one guy. He was the number one revealer of who God was to the Jewish people. And he's talking to Jesus, the number one revealer. Elijah was arguably the most dynamic in terms of power. And he came along in a transition of history. So these both were just incredible people of revealing God through power, revealing God through law, revealing God through truth. And they're talking to Jesus. So it would have had that as well. And then finally, it says the cloud comes down. And a voice from heaven says, "This is my son, my chosen one. Listen to him." Listen to him. If you want your soul to be restored, you have to have, and I have to have, an increasing revelation of who Jesus really is. I've got to really come in tune with who he is, how great he is. I may see him, and one of the reasons I say this, speaking of being in the Bible Belt, maybe having some church background, and I know that's not everybody, but many of us, the thing that can happen to us is we have kind of this cartoon image that we got from our kid, we got when we were kids, in our minds. Jesus is the guy with long hair and a beard. He's got the white robe, and it's easy to say he fed the 5,000 and he did all those things, and it's easy to see him as less than he is. And you have to consciously go about that. As a matter of fact, when we leave the Restore series, here in a couple weeks, we're going to do a whole new series, and I'm calling it Overcoming Heard It All Before-ism. Because that's exactly what goes on. Heard it all before-ism. Because if we go through Luke, a lot of us have heard these stories before. Jesus fed the 5,000, he calmed the storm, he did all this stuff. But what we're going for is a much more sophisticated understanding, an adult understanding of who Jesus is. One of the greatest things I ever had happen to me was that they forced me to watch this video series when I was in college. It was this like 13-part thing where this scholar was talking about, but the conclusion was this. You have to remember that Jesus is not the Lord over spiritual things and church stuff and then the nice little guy that wants you to be nice. He is the Lord of all things. He is the Lord, period. He is the creator of all things. He's the one that put the mystery and power and wonder in quasars and black holes. He put the cuteness in puppies. He put the fun in popcorn. He put your breath in your lungs. He's the reason you can breathe, you can see, you can feel, you can hear, you can do all things. He's the Lord of all. And the more you recognize that, the more you understand that, the more you expand your view of who he is, the better off you're going to be. Because if you noticed, our culture is getting tougher and more difficult. And things are getting more chaotic. And there's a culture war that's intensifying all the time. And there's all kinds of voices floating around everywhere. I'm telling you, your sanity will come the greater you see Jesus who he is. What did he say? He is my son. You rightly identify him. And you do what in response? Listen to him. Rightly identify him, listen to him. Rightly identify him, listen to him. Rightly identify him and listen to him. That ought to be the theme of your life. That ought to be the theme of my life. Because that is what is going to restore your soul more than any other single thing. Is recognizing that and understanding that. I'm going to help everybody with this. Today, the way we're going to close out this series, across all three campuses, and maybe even if you're at home, you're okay. I want everybody, first of all, to stand to their feet. And there's a passage outside of this that I consider to be the greatest statement of Jesus' identity in all of human literature. And it was a creed that would have been quoted by the early church within the first generation of Jesus being on the earth. And if you would go to an early church service, you would have heard this creed being said. And so what I want us to do, if you're comfortable doing so, if you don't believe these things, it's okay just to listen and read and really think about it and explore what it's saying. But I would like us to just say out loud this creed, and then I'll pray after that, because it's all about, make it my ambition to have a true revelation, greater revelation. Let's read it together. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body of the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Father in heaven, thank you for the Son. Thank you for the revelation of who he is. Thank you for reminding us that through him and in him and to him are all things, and that his death reconciled all things. And Lord, I pray that you will give each one of us, no matter where we're listening, from what perspective in life we're listening from. Some of us may not believe and we doubt and we wonder about these things. Others just need to go on to a new place in our spiritual lives. Lord, I ask you in the name of Jesus to give a true and real and deeper revelation of who you are, Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that our view of you will expand beyond anything we've known before, because it can and it should. I pray that you'll get rid of the cartoon images. I pray that you'll get rid of any lightweight images we have of you. Thank you, you remember that we're dust, and we're not really good at this. And thank you that you want, first of all, just to call us to prayer, but most of all, help us to rightly identify you and then listen to you. In Jesus' name, amen.